I'm Michelle Folcom, and welcome to Empower Her Every Day. This is a series where we're going to be talking to Rice alums that continuously empower women every single day, wherever they are in the world. And today I'm here with Claire Shorall. She graduated Rice University in 2010. She was on the women's track and field and cross country team. um,
Yeah.
After graduating, she worked for Teach for America in the Bay, and she has been doing great things. I will tell you, she led the computer science for all public schools in Oakland. Look at that. She was also
Oh,
an investor at a venture capital fund and also the co-founder and CEO of an app that I use, Top Knot. So, guys, please welcome Claire.
hi. Oh my gosh, that was such a good intro. I love this. Let's talk.
Okay, let's just get right into it. So,
Yep.
Claire, what was your experience as a female student athlete at Rice?
Uh, it made my time, right? So I came to Rice in 2005, and at first, so I walked on. I had been a cross country and track athlete in high school and had been really successful, but was sort of wavering as to whether or not I wanted to compete collegiately. And I met Jim Bevan, the coach of cross country and track. And he was just such a warm person. And I just knew the team would give me a sense of purpose. And I can't really imagine my collegiate experience without having track and cross country in my life. It was a forcing function for me to be on top of my soul. It uh, allowed me to travel. Maybe that's something that's hard to think about right now. But yeah, like I just saw progress over the course of the 4 years I was there, particularly country, which was never my strongest suit. But overall for me, a team with people who would eventually go on to be pro athletes or to even run in the Olympics. And I knew that that wasn't in my future, but breaking 5 minutes in the mile and being a scorer at a conference, like those sort of things really mattered and gave me great purpose and really rounded out the 5 years I spent at Rice. There's so much that you get out of that period in your life, but for me, it was ultimately really multifaceted. And I walk away with the academic lessons, but so much of the lessons that I learned in college or that I use every single day come from being part of the team.
Oh, love that. As someone who is, this is my last year and about to leave the team, it's good for me to hear that you've learned from the team. So I know that I'm going to be able to take things um,
Yeah.
just like you did and hopefully be able to apply it in my life. And obviously, I know from how you are a leader that you were probably a great leader on the team as well. And so just happy to see that carryover. And I hope that's something that, I can emulate. Um,
Yeah. No, it definitely I served as like the de facto captain for multiple years, and also now, like I'm in the position to hire people. I've been in the position to influence those decisions in the past, and anytime I see a college athlete, like I know something about them and how they spent their time and their drive. Like you don't just do this stuff casually. And so I definitely think it's a marker that you should carry proudly throughout the rest of your career. But you actually probably have a more of a sports focus at the beginning. I knew I wasn't going pro in sports, but you can win some road races in your post collegiate life if you were really good in college. So that was more my circuit.
no, like we all have our different paths, and I do hope that I can help win a little bit, afterwards, and that's what I'm working towards. But I want to
Yeah.
continue on asking about one thing that's been really big for a lot of us student athletes right now is truly mental health. And for us women, it shows in different ways. We see it through body image and even just like the typical mental health things that we talk about on our day-to-day basis. And I want to talk to you about how that may have impacted you as a student athlete and even right now as a woman.
Yeah. When I was in college, I I took advantage of all that were there. So I worked with Dr. Anding, who was the nutritionist at the time. I was like constantly in conversation with our trainers and our coaches. I definitely, I was aware of the fact, particularly being in distance running. Distance running has long been overshadowed disorders, particularly among women. And there's this false notion that lighter is better. And so like that was just part of the understanding. And I did everything I could to understand how my body worked best. Now I think it's really interesting because you have these Instagram accounts and social media and just like a bombardment of imagery. And I have particularly drawn to athletes who are talking candidly about either their struggles or their recovery or just their like alternative body shape, which, is potentially like an unfair way to describe it. But there are so many positive role models out there now that young athletes have access to. And I think really just channeling those voices, the voices of health, the voices of rest, the voices of taking care of yourself, both physically and mentally. Like Instagram wasn't a thing when I was in school. Facebook was just starting. It was very much like just in the network. So I just had so much less visibility into the elite athletes of the time, but I'm really glad that there's so many supportive role models for the young people today. And hey, like this is a thing for athletes, and we're all constantly evolving our understanding of ourselves and who we are in the sport. And so reaching out to professionals and, not just like tinkering with things on your own, but like being health focused and how you're doing this, like, as somebody who's now 10 years out, like you want your body to work for the long run. And so taking care of this sanctuary, right, matters immensely.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think one thing that a lot of people in my generation need to understand is the impact that social media truly does have on us, and the whole that it just sucks us in. I know for me, I had to stop following like Instagram influencers because I saw that it was negatively impacting me. And even whenever I do see other track athletes, I'm like comparing myself, like, oh, am I too muscular? Like, I don't have a six pack. Like, I don't even know
Right.
how to handle it. But I think, you know, doing like therapy and understanding, like, my body is good, like I am enough, and talking to people, going to nutritionists, these are the things that are going to help us understand like that what we're doing is correct. And if we're not, like, we can go to them and figure out what we need to do that is best for us.
Yeah. I totally hear you. And like there's this real pressure of, like the real pressure exists of performance athletes need to do things in order to keep themselves like in the best shape possible. And I think what the key is finding what that means for you, right? Like, yeah. Anyway, there are some really, really powerful people out there. I have a doppelganger who's Alexi Pappas. It's like Greek runners. And I go to her like Instagram a lot because I think that she is sort of epitomizing doing things the right and healthy way. And she just like wrote this book that's all about like her mindset shift and has gone through a lot. And so like for me, if I had been in college and there had been somebody like that for me to look up to, I think there would have been like a path that was truly well understood. I was fortunate to have teammates who like lived a life of balance. We all had like other things going on besides just cross country and track. And I think that gave us like purpose and perspective. And so, it really matters. Like if there are people, young people trying to figure out where they want to go to school, like it matters the culture of your team immensely. Like that's the sort of thing that makes or breaks like your understanding of self, really. Because like if you're in a collective that's unhealthy, then then it's hard to fight that battle, right? But if you are around really great other young people who are doing things for the right reasons and doing things the right way and patient and driven, like, then you see there's a path forward that is doing this sustainably.
We are the culmination of the people in our group. And so,
Yes.
so it's so important, right? Like, so this is why I'm happy that you and I at Rice, even though we very different times, we've had a great culture. So I think that's a testament to Coach Bevan about really helping us.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. Yes. Yeah. And the types of people who are driven to coming to Rice and doing both academics and athletics at a high level, right? Like, and in a small community. Yeah. Yeah. But always Coach Bevan.
Yes. Love him. So Claire,
Love him.
you've worked in two very different settings, I'd have to say. I would consider you a woman who was leading in STEM, which is not something that's typical for women, and I'm putting quotations around that because it is something that we can do and we should be able to do. But you're also a part of a venture capital fund, which is also very different in finance. And I want to know how, what were your experiences as a woman in two very different fields, and in one field where you're not expected to be?
Right. So I started my career teaching AP Bio, AP Calculus, and AP Computer Science at a high school in East Oakland. And I think the way that I saw that work was about enabling the future to be able to go on and study STEM. So part of the reason why I actually taught all three of those courses was I was initially teaching just an AP Bio class, well, an AP Bio and a biology class. And I had all these young people in my class who wanted to be doctors and nurses and just healthcare workers in general. And they were going off to college, many of them to, Berkeley or UCLA or Cal State East Bay. And they were taking these first year science classes. And they were doing really well in bio, which was great, but often struggled with math classes. And, the high school where I taught certainly was underserving students in math. And so, I scoured the literature and I was like, what allows students to be more confident in their first year math class? And I saw that even just exposure to calculus was a determining factor into whether or not young people would graduate with a STEM degree. And so I asked our administration, help me find a calculus teacher. And about a month later to me, and they're like, hey, we found them. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so great. Who'd we find? And they were like, you. So I started teaching AP Bio and AP Calculus. And then the next wave of young people, went to college and they had these aspirations to graduate with a degree. And they were coming back and saying, but, what was the science thing? Like, we never saw this in school. And I was like, Lasai. And so I added an AP science course as well. I mean, candidly, when I came to Rice, I took an intro to intro to mathematical computation or engineering computation, whatever the first whatever the beginning intro engineering programming class was. It's too long ago, apparently. But it was my first exposure to programming overall. And I also felt, so I totally knew the feeling and I wanted to pay it forward and at least have the exposure to an AP computer science class. When they went into that first engineering computation course that they were going to take, they didn't have the same sort of imposter syndrome that I did. So at that point, I was teaching all three classes. And in 2014, 2015, I was teaching just a large percentage of the Black girls in the state of California. Basically, I had taught 16 girls in my class all who were taking the test in the entire state, which was an incredible wake-up call. I had not realized, just because my own school was so under-resourced, that across the state, these disparities existed in such a way. And that was just entirely unacceptable to me, which is why I transitioned out of the classroom, loved, into leading computer science education for a district. You know, we went from having 200 students in the entire district of 40,000 with like even a course with the word computer in it. And many of those were like or biz apps. And in 2 years, we went to having over 5,000 students enrolled in a full year long CS course. And there were gender parity in those courses because we were educating full grade levels. It was just like part of the curriculum. And so, yeah, I think ultimately my impact in STEM is a little bit less like my own contributions, but more, and, you know, the young people who I worked with or the teachers who I worked with to bring this content to young people to like have more women in STEM moving forward. That work was awesome. One of the highlights for me, at least, was being mentioned by Melinda Gates in like a keynote address that she made at this conference called Grace Hopper. I know, trust me, like your phone blows up on the day that Melinda Gates is like, hey, look at Claire Shorall's program in Oakland. Yeah, that was cool. And, you know, at that point, I had spent 8 years in the classroom plus in the school district. And so I wanted to try something that would challenge me. And investing seemed like another form of impact, right? You get to make decisions on where dollars are being spent in order to develop companies or ideas or anyway, so I made an elusive jump from publication into venture capital to do that. And yeah, investing is certainly a position of power. It's also a position where, once again, like gender parity is nowhere close to being met. There are relatively few women in venture capital, even fewer who have what's known as check writing ability. And so, yeah, it was a difference in education. There were definitely, like, most of my colleagues were women when I was teaching. Educate is just like the actual workplace is more reflective of society at large than in venture. But yeah, I think whatever work I do, I'm always about sending the elevator back down, right? So like wherever I want to bring more people up. And sometimes it hits you in the face. Like when you look up and you see that there are fewer than 50 Black girls in an entire is, you know, the most populous in this country taking an exam that is opening up the doors for wealth creation and idea generation. And right. And like, for me, that was an instant non-negotiable. I had to go solve that problem. Other times I think it's more subtle and, you know, you learn things about yourself and you try to figure out like how those things can be paid forward. It's not like a showstopper problem, a thing that sits with you, and it's okay to just like sit with it. But always as long as those learnings don't stay relegated to just you.
So yeah, Claire, you're just great. I'm blown away by the things that you've done and the impact that you had. And I know that you said, you know, it was about the people who you worked with that helped you get to the places that you were. But I think you had an idea and you had a plan and you saw a problem and you did something about it. And you truly did do something about it to where you were in a great leadership position and then did all that you could to impact people. But now I want to know more about maybe some of the stereotypes and stigmas that you faced in those two different places of work.
You know, I come from education and education, like the workforce kind of looks like the country at large, right? There's gender parity, if not more women there. Investment, there were very few women, but there was a lot of comment around like how we increased representation. I would say that I wasn't aware of biases until this past year when I was fundraising for my startup. It was interesting. I will say, like, there was an article that came out in the fall that basically said 2020 was one of the worst years for women raising venture capital. And it's always bad, right? 2% of venture capital goes to all women teams. So like we knew we were up against it from the start. Like 2% is a ridiculous number. Like that's, you just look at that and you're like, how? But what was fascinating for me was that with each successive person who sent me this article, I feel like I started to internalize it more, right? I feel like I started to be like, oh my gosh, like, is this actually not going to happen? Because like it's a down year, it's always hard, you know, it's just like there's a bombardment of messaging, and I don't think that the people who were sending me things like that or telling me that it was really hard meant any harm by it, but like these are the sort of detrimental messages that start to like settle into your brain and like really like permeate and take over the way that you see yourself or your processes. And like I have been a confident little person. Like I like went through middle and high school feeling that way. I came out of Rice feeling empowered. Like I have always like seen myself a leader and as like able to these sort of messages, and like they sunk in. And I felt imposter syndrome. And you know, not that I've been totally immune from that, but it is really interesting how like something like that can just like turn your perception of yourself. And these like internalized stereotypes and biases, they're real, right? Like there used to be a study that we would all read every year as educators where just telling young women before a math SAT that young women are not as good at math would actually tank scores, right? Like messaging matters immensely. So of course, whenever I was proctoring, I was like, you are beautiful, you are wonderful, your brain is big, you are so good at this, you work hard, like you have this within you. But yeah, I like very much confronted this year in a way that I hadn't previously identified. And we were very fortunate to have raised. And so we are part of that 2%. But man, like, it's hard to go out and do things confidently when the world is telling you that like it doesn't work for you. And I carry so many privileges, right? Like, you know, that's just women founded teams. That's not even women of color founded team. Like there are so many layered privileges that like I'm not even talking about with just like that funding number. But woof, like it gets hard.
Yeah, and I know it does get hard. And me being a Black woman, sometimes I feel like it's a double whammy on me. And I'm just in college. I haven't even experienced the real world. So I wonder what it's like going to be, what it's going to be like whenever I step out. But one thing I want to note is that, you know, it's crazy that at first you may not have felt it, and it's hard for you to see. But one thing that's so unfortunate is the fact that it's there. The fact that
Right.
you see this 2%, the fact that you have to worry about whether, you know, top knot is going to happen or not. Even
Right.
though it is something that is so empowering for women.
Right.
I'm really distraught at the fact that, you know, this is continuously happening and we're in 2021, but we're still as women, we're still worried about what is going to happen in our future because really simply because we're women.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
even though that's the case, you've still found a way, Claire, to empower yourself and the women around you. What? Well, you mentioned Top Knot a little bit.
Yeah.
And I want to know how do you use that to empower women, and what else do you do for yourself to empower her every day?
Nice. Okay, so Top Knot is a personal development platform for women. So we believe very strongly in coaching. Coaching has been catalytic in my life as an athlete, as a professional, just like as a human. But it's super expensive. It's so expensive. In fact, for my coach, we pay hundreds of dollars an hour. And my co-founder and I just thought fundamentally that's unfair, and that there are ways to bring coaching downstream as far as price is concerned, to open it up to any woman who's looking to make a change or to realize her potential. So what we've created is a system that both utilizes a platform, so technology, but also groups. And that's sort of our special sauce. We are able to create really rich coaching conversations without a facilitator, by putting like really, really neat structures in place to allow people to support each other and advance on their own like wants, needs, goals, etc. So yeah, we're a year in. We have been like tinkering with the formulas and building out the product, and we're so close to the next release. But if you're watching this, you can go download now.
Please.
But yeah, it's, you know, at scale, if every woman had access to coaching and reflective practice and an ability to look at like the actions that they're taking and how that moves them closer or further away from their values and what they want, I just see a really beautiful world. And so in order to make the promise on everyone, we've priced accordingly. So our pricing is a sliding scale. It essentially asks what you can afford to pay, which is pretty atypical from other platforms. And yeah, I am just so excited to be impacting women at scale in this way, in a way that doesn't feel watered down. Like the program on Top Knot is truly catalytic, and yeah, I'm excited for every woman to have the opportunity to do what I'm doing now. I do think like it's worth pointing out. So we take the broadest definition of the word woman. Like we welcome non-binary, trans, like everyone. But the reason that we're focusing on women comes, at least for me, from my experience in the classroom, which people are always like, really? But when I was teaching these AP courses, so AP Calculus and AP Computer Science, and I was teaching it to largely students who were reading under grade level. And it wasn't just so much taking the content and making it accessible. In fact, in many that didn't serve the young people I was working with. What did serve them was thinking through the motivations for why they were there, getting themselves to see themselves as scholars and worthy of the material, having this mentality that it was okay to fail at first, or to struggle to pick up the information, that speed of acquiring information wasn't everything, right? And we had this collective mindset where each individual was working harder, but also that the group was uplifted by everybody else's individual efforts. And so that is something that shows up on Top Knot. And the reason that with women first is that we actually think there's a unique set of needs amongst women that need to be addressed. And that when we size fits all, that we're often not building something with like our core audience in mind. And so, well, I think deserves a coach and empowerment and a path forward that allows them to feel fulfilled and balanced and like in charge of their journey. We are leveraging this community to uplift a segment of the population that, to your point, like it doesn't yet, and like unique needs. And yeah, so it is a joy to work on every day. We are just on the verge of launching something bigger, which is, you know, exciting to see something of your own creation go out into the world. And yeah, it is by definition like the most EmpowHer like product I could probably be working on, and so I'm really excited to talk to you about it.
Thank you for talking about it. I chose you to be on EmpowHer every day because of Top Knot, because I know that you empower women every day through the app. I remember whenever I first got on it, I was like, I was having a hard time and all, but then I answered the first like general question, what are your goals? Like, what do you feel like is your purpose? And I start to feel empowered because it made me realize that, like, well, first off, I do have
Yeah.
goals and I do have a purpose, and I see myself working towards getting through that purpose through the app. And it was only the first few steps, y'all.
Right.
What happens whenever we continuously do this and we see more women getting coached and
Yeah.
more women really getting our unique needs met in different venues, and especially using technology. We know how important and how much that's actually going to impact our society. So Claire, I just want to thank you for really providing the support to women in their like individual journeys, so we can like be a collective and we can all be leaders. And I just really appreciate you also being on this interview and talking about the experiences that you face. I know it can be a little bit hard and a little daunting to think about, but what you're saying is going to help somebody else. It's going to help another Rice student. It's going to help another woman who's listening to this. I hope you guys are listening because she's saying some good stuff out here.
Right.
And just,
but that's all right. And I want to thank you for putting this on, because it's these sort of messages, right? You don't know who you're going to impact, and you don't know who's listening or whose heart is open to the information on any given day. So I just appreciate you immensely for giving me the opportunity.
Anytime.
And for welcoming you into my home office.
Hello, love the pillows.
Hey.
Those have been my favorite. I've been staring at them like, oh, they're so cute.
Well, hey. I got a lot of Rice gear on this wall. I guess next time we'll turn my monitor we can relive the glory days.
I know. All my Rice stuff is also in my room. You can kind of see the poster right there.
Right.
Thank you for joining us on EmpowHer every day. Please continue, and I know you will, to empower women every single day.